Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session 4 of the book club, Your Body in Balance. And today we are going to be discussing chapter 4, which is tackling cancer for men. And a lot of the same topics that have been discussed in previous chapters are discussed here, so we can always see, hopefully by the end of this book club, you'll see a common theme for many of these cancers. Of course, not all of them, but many, probably the most common ones. So this chapter, which starts on page 64, starts with Dr. Neal Barnard telling us a story of a physician who was the president of Philadelphia's Methodist Hospital, and his name was Anthony Satilaro. Okay, it would be good if you just read it, because it takes about almost 5 pages, but it is a very interesting story of how a doctor who's very influential and recognized and practiced regular medicine, just was doing a checkup, and when he did an x-ray of his chest, he was called by the radiologist, and they found some kind of a dense area in the x-ray of the chest, and it turned out to be a cancerous tumor. And the scan also showed other tumors in the skull and sternum and spine. And he was a young a man. I think he was about mid-40s or something like that. This cancer, though, when the biopsy was done, showed that it had started in the prostate and it had gone to other parts of the body. To make this kind of long story short, he tried, after a while, he tried changing the diet. He tried changing what he ate. He was very skeptical. He didn't think that that was going to do anything. But it did. It made a huge huge difference. So a year later, his doctor repeated his bone scan, and the doctor was stunned. Okay, so he was basically given a death sentence. And a year later, they do a bone scan to see how much more it had spread. And the doctor was stunned, and Anthony was stunned. The cancer was nowhere to be seen. It looked like a totally normal scan. They had to assume that the cancer was not entirely gone, but it had shrunk to the point of being no longer visible. This was unprecedented. His advanced cancer has disappeared. Can you imagine? We're not talking about preventing. We're talking about already having cancer and being in an advanced form. So Tony decided that he had to find a way to let others know of his experience and of the possibility that foods are more powerful than doctors and patients had imagined. He wrote a book called Recalled by Life, which quickly became a bestseller, and he began to spread the word in lectures and television programs. So something unfortunate happened then. Tony did something troubling. He had been well for so long he had decided to test himself. I want to pause here for a second. Many of us who follow a whole food plant-based diet, many of us who attend my 7-day program realize that soon enough, we're feeling great. And we take it for granted. We easily forget how miserable we were feeling, we were feeling when we were eating all of the high fat, high calorie foods of the standard American diet. And so we start to deviate. And then we start feeling bad again and remember how horrible it was to feel that way. So this is a sort of the same case. Unfortunately, Dr. Satilaro had been feeling well now for over a year, and he probably decided, well, sorry, he decided, well, I'm going to do a little test. Okay. He wanted to see if he would still be well if he went off of this diet that he was trying. Everybody strongly urged him not to do that. Driving cancer into remission once is a challenge. Taking a chance that it would return and then trying to tackle it a second time was something no one other than Tony wanted to try. Some months later, I called Tony. Dr. Barnard did. His voice was different. His speech was slurred, as if he was on narcotics. And yes, he told me the cancer had returned. He was in terrible pain, and a few weeks later, Tony died. Did an unhealthy diet cause his cancer? Did the diet change make it go away? If he had stuck with a healthy diet, would he still be alive today? There are no answers to these questions, but many other people have also used a healthy diet to fight cancer. And research studies are starting to catch up with them, showing the power of foods. Of course, this doesn't mean that surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and any other cancer treatments do not have important roles. They do. But in addition to whatever other treatments a person may need, food choices are key, often most important of all. And here we have on page 69, the recurring theme. And the recurring theme is that cancer continues to be linked to milk. A surprising body of evidence has linked dairy products with prostate cancer. So men out there, please don't do this. When you see dairy, put a picture of a skull or of death, okay? Put something that poison. Don't do this to yourself. For starters, the disease has long been common in the United States and Northern Europe, where milk, cheese, and butter are the order of the day. It was rather rare in Japan, Thailand, China, and other countries where dairy products were not part of the traditional diet. And no, it's not genetics. Okay, it's not the Japanese and Chinese and Thailandese people are genetically different, because when they do consume dairy products, guess what happens? Cancer starts to appear. As westernization brought dairy and meat products into these countries, prostate cancer rates climbed. 2 large Harvard studies investigated the connection and found that milk drinking men are much more likely to develop prostate cancer compared with men who generally steer clear of dairy products. The first of these, called the Physicians' Health Study, included 20,885 men. Okay, so these are not small studies with 100 people, and found that those who had at least 2.5 dairy servings per day had a 34% increased risk of developing prostate cancer. The second, called the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, included even more men. It was 47,781 men, and found that men drinking more than 2 milk servings per day were 60% more likely to develop prostate cancer. The studies are out there. The information is out there, that you may not get the information, or that the industry doesn't want you to get it, or even that your doctor doesn't give you this information. That is another topic, but the information is out there. So why would this happen? Does milk have hormones in it? Well, we've been reading throughout the book so far that yes, of course it does. It comes from a cow who is busily making hormones, especially estrogens, to get into her milk and become concentrated as milk is turned into cheese. But for prostate cancer, the real problem might be something else. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of these 3 letters, we should say, IGF. When you drink milk, your body produces a compound called insulin-like growth factor. This is a very important term to learn. IGF-1. Insulin-like, because it's like insulin, growth factor. It makes you grow. Let's keep reading. Everyone has some IGF-1 in their blood naturally, especially during childhood and adolescence. As its name suggests, it helps you grow. When you have reached adulthood, your body makes less IGF-1 because it's time for growth to stop. It just makes perfect sense. Okay, so there is this factor, it's called the IGF-1 factor, that helps your body to grow when you're a child and you're adolescent. And then when you're an adult, you stop growing, so it makes less. You do not want too much IGF-1 in your blood as an adult, because just as it causes children to grow into adults, it also causes cancer cells to grow into tumors. If you were to mix IGF-1 with cancer cells in a test tube, the cells would grow like crazy. Milk consumption boosts IGF-1 levels. In a Creighton University study, adults who had 3 dairy servings a day had increases in their IGF-1 levels of about 1%. So could 1% be significant? Okay, well, let's go back to the Physicians' Health Study. The researchers checked blood tests on each participant. It turned out that those men who developed cancer had about 10% more IGF-1 in their blood when the study started, compared with men who remained cancer-free. In other words, it appears that dairy products boost the production of IGF-1 in the human body, and in turn, IGF boosts cancer cell growth. Yikes, it says here. That's a pretty bad advertisement for the dairy case. And there is more, as if this wasn't enough, okay? Dairy products are linked to prostate cancer through another mechanism. So normally, vitamin D comes from sunlight. As sunlight hits your skin, it produces a form of vitamin D that is then activated in the liver and kidneys. From there, vitamin D works as a hormone whose job is to help you absorb calcium from the foods you eat. Vitamin D also has a cancer-preventing effect. And here is where dairy products do some dirty work. If you think milk, or if you drink milk or eat cheese, their calcium floods into the bloodstream. Your body recognizes that it is actually getting too much calcium, and it starts to slow down the activation of vitamin D, aiming to reduce calcium absorption. That's a good reaction. It will help your body from overdosing on calcium. But when you turn off your vitamin D activation, you lose part of the anti-cancer effect. So dairy products have the effect of suppressing your body's vitamin D activity and puts you at a higher risk for cancer. At least that is what evidence suggests. Nature designed milk for only one purpose: to provide temporary nourishment for a rapidly growing infant. This is sometimes, this is so simple. And the fact that people don't understand or want to understand this is just shocking. There is only one purpose for milk, and that is to help a baby grow into adulthood. If we defeat the weaning process and continue to make drinking milk a lifelong habit, we make ourselves vulnerable to effects that nature never intended. All right, so that's for dairy products. If there's anything that you can do, is drop dairy products. Now, on page 71, he talks about fish oils and prostate cancer. Certain omega-3 fatty acids have also been implicated in prostate cancer. They are the long-chain omega-3s found in fish oils. They're called EPA, we're going to use the short name, DPA, and DHA. For years, supplement manufacturers have been pushing fish oils for heart health, brain health, and many other purposes. Most of these health claims have crashed and burned under scientific scrutiny. In the process, several research studies have found that men with higher amounts of these omega-3s in their blood had higher prostate cancer risks. So in page 72, Dr. Barnard mentions in 2013, Ohio State University researchers reported new findings from a large group of men. And it turned out that those with the most EPA, DPA, and DHA in their bloodstreams had 43% higher prostate cancer risk compared with men with the lowest blood levels. They wrote this, where a lack of coherent mechanism has led authors of previous studies, including us, to consider these findings suspect. Their replication here strongly suggests that long-chain omega-3 PUFA, that is EPA, DPA, and DHA, do play a role in enhancing prostate tumorigenesis. In other words, believe it. In 2014, researchers from 7 different studies put all their data together. They had findings from 5,098 men who developed cancer and 6,649 who did not. It turned out EPA and DHA were both linked to prostate cancer. Men with the highest EPA blood levels had a 14% higher risk compared with men with the lowest levels. Men with the highest DHA blood levels had a 16% higher risk. So what do we make of this? First, plant-derived omega-3 called alpha-linolenic acid does not appear to cause prostate cancer. It is actually an essential nutrient, whether it comes from walnuts, flax seeds, or green vegetables. Then on page 73, Dr. Barnard says, if you do decide to take EPA and DHA, I would recommend the vegan brands derived from algae, which are widely available online. They help you avoid the impurities and odors that can come from fish-derived versions. However, there is no reason to think their health effects, good or bad, are different from fish-derived EPA and DHA. So for men, okay, it is very important that we eat tomatoes. Tomatoes to the rescue on page 73. The red color in a tomato, watermelon, or pink grapefruit comes from lycopene. It is an antioxidant, very powerful. So here, Dr. Barnard says, a Harvard study found that men who have 10 or more servings of tomato products each week have 35% less risk of developing prostate cancer compared with men who have tomatoes less often. And that was true even when the tomatoes came in the form of ketchup or even pizza sauce. 10 servings in a week is nothing. A serving is about the size of your fist. You know, it's less than 1 a day. So it is very easy to get your 10 servings of tomatoes per week to help you reduce the risk of prostate cancer. There is one important thing here, and that is raw tomatoes are fine, but here is the but. Cooking helps release lycopene from the tomatoes, making it easier to absorb. So what I like to do is I like to make my own tomato sauce, because remember, you don't want the oil that will add pounds to your body, and overweight or excess pounds contribute to more, probability of cancer. So no oil. make a lot of it. Just, it's easy. It's very easy to make tomato sauce, and then you can freeze it, okay? But if not, you can still find brands that have no oil and hopefully no added salt. Or cheese, of course. You can put them in also in stews. You can put them, like it says here, on pizzas without cheese. You can put them on pasta. You can, I mean, there are so many ways that you can include cooked tomatoes in different things. Okay. Then he goes on to talk about the benefits of soy products, which I must admit that I don't eat. And so maybe I will start trying some soy products. Never been really crazy about soy, and that I don't have a real reason why. I never thought that they were bad, other than they're more calorically dense and have a larger amount of fat. But mostly I just never really care for it. So, but I will try to include it. And any soy products that is fermented seems to have a more powerful effect to cut the risk of cancer by 35%. All right, so more about prostate cancer survival on page 75, talking about how traditional Japanese dietary patterns are very different from a typical American diet. In Japan, at least a few decades ago, dairy products were not used, and meat is kept to an absolute minimum. And so the regular Japanese diet is based on rice, vegetables, fruits, and soy products such as miso soup and tofu. It is not exactly a macrobiotic diet, but it is much closer to it than the meaty meals most Americans grow up on. Although Japanese traditions have eroded considerably under Western influences, to the extent remnants of those traditions remain, they have made for healthier diets. Okay, so then we have a very well known and influential doctor, Dr. Dean Ornish. I had him as a guest in one of my book clubs that you can find in my YouTube channel. And in 2005, he published a new study that included 93 men with prostate cancer, divided into two groups. So in one group, men were asked to follow their usual eating habits. That was really the control group. The other group was asked to do something very different. They began a diet with no animal products at all. That is, a vegan diet. So out with the chicken, fish, turkey, and burgers, and in with healthy grains, vegetables, fruits, beans, and the various meals that are made from them. If a man wanted bacon or sausage, it had to be veggie bacon or veggie sausage. Spaghetti was to be topped with tomato sauce instead of meat sauce. The research team followed the men's health with a test called PSA. A rise in PSA level indicates increased activity of prostate cells. For men with prostate cancer, it suggests cancer progression. So what happened here? For the men on the vegan diet, the experience was just the opposite. Their average PSA wasn't rising. In fact, it fell about 4%, which was good news. And not one of the men on the vegan diet needed treatment during year-long study. After 2 years, listen to this, after 2 years, 13 of the 49 men in the control group had to undergo surgery, radiation, or other treatment for their cancer, compared with only 2 of the 43 men on the vegan diet. A huge difference. These studies show that prostate cancer is strongly linked to Western dietary habits. The hormone haywire caused by these foods contributes to the proliferation of cancer cells. All right, and finally, there is a very short section here about testicular cancer. And it is one of the most common cancer in men, in younger men between 20 and 45. It is often detected early and is easily treated, and the survival rates are high. However, it is increasingly common, suggesting that something other than genes and bad luck is at work. And the problem doesn't appear to be, in this case, smoking or alcohol. Exposure to estrogen during uterine development appears to increase risk. And like prostate cancer, testicular cancer is more common in men with a higher body weight. Again, reducing your weight is a great benefit for reducing also the risk of cancer. Dairy products, especially cheese, have been identified as suspects in several studies. A 2003 study showed that men consuming the most cheese had, listen to this, 87% higher risk of developing testicular cancer compared with men who ate little or no cheese. Needless to say, dairy products contain estrogen traces that are more concentrated as milk is turned into cheese. So the last page, page 77. What are the steps for tackling cancer risk for men? Well, it's pretty much the same that we have been seeing before. So it's a good review, but it's also good for us to notice that these are pretty easy steps to follow. And whether it is for cancer for women or cancer for men or for infertility even, or for PMS, whatever it may be, these are pretty much the same. Let's just quickly go over them. Number 1, avoid animal products. Throw out the dairy products, meat and eggs, and focus your meals on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. And yes, it is easy to do this. You don't have to be a chef. You don't have to buy 100 books. On my website, on my YouTube, you can find the free meal ideas. If you take my 7-day program, I'll show you how to combine these things and make very quickly delicious meals. Number 2, minimize the use of added oils. I would say minimize or completely take them out. While vegetable oils are healthier than animal fats, avoiding added oils will accelerate healthful weight loss. Number 3, take advantage of lycopene-rich foods, such as tomatoes and watermelon, and eat them whole. Please don't put them in blenders. You want to have the intact fiber there so that fiber and water produce bulk. You will feel full and remain full for a longer period of time. And most importantly, that fiber will help your body detoxify. Number 4, Have soy products regularly, like soy milk and tofu, tempeh, edamame, miso, and so on. Would I have it every day? Probably not, personally, but I'm going to start, since I don't really eat any, I will start including them once a week. Then I will move to twice a week. And maybe I will go to the point where I include them 3 times a week, but I'm going to try to add it. Number 5, go for 40 grams of fiber per day. And we have seen already how if we eat a whole food plant-based diet, this is not an issue at all. By the end of the day, you will have had 40 or even more grams of fiber. Beans, vegetables, fruits, and grains will get you there easily. And number 6, be sure to take a vitamin B12 supplement. This is important for everyone, and especially those on a plant-based diet. So that is chapter 4. And for chapter 5, it's short, and it talks about polycystic ovary syndrome. And in order to cover other chapters in this book, I will just quickly mention a couple of things here on page 84. Food choices for tackling PCOS. Again, guess what? Avoid animal products. Include some soy products in your meals. Avoid fatty foods and added oils. Page 86. Favor low glycemic index foods. The glycemic index is a simple rating system that shows which foods are gentlest on your blood sugar. For example, white bread raises blood sugar quickly, but rye bread is gentler on your blood sugar, and pumpernickel even more. So there you have other choices if you like bread. So they do not affect your blood sugar the way that white bread does. So white bread is a high glycemic index food, or high GI food for short, and rye and pumpernickel are low GI. You want to favor low GI foods, but let me make a very important statement here. Favor low glycemic foods within the plant-based kingdom, because you may see the glycemic index of a sweet potato, which is wonderful, and then you may look at a slice of pizza full of cheese, and that slice of pizza with full of cheese has lower glycemic index than your sweet potato. And obviously, the healthier choice is the sweet potato. So you have to stay within the plant world. Otherwise, the glycemic index is confusing, and the glycemic index can get you in trouble if you don't know that. All right. By avoiding animal products, minimizing oils, and favoring low GI foods, the fat inside your cells will gradually dissipate. In the process, insulin resistance fades away. This helps bring down your high blood sugar, and it improves your overall body chemistry and hormone balance. And then he talks a little bit about don't cut carbs. Of course, the word carbs is very confusing because most people think of carbs being the same thing, whether it is a slice of chocolate cake or a potato or oatmeal, and one is unrefined, unprocessed carbohydrate, which is very good and is pure energy for our body, and it doesn't turn into sugar or it doesn't turn into fat. And the other one is processed carbohydrates, which is not good for us. So rather than saying carbohydrates, I like to say starch, because starch is corn, rice, beans, sweet potatoes, but we wouldn't call a cookie a starch. That is a processed carbohydrate. So thank you for attending today. Tomorrow, I would like to talk about tackling menopause. So if you would please read chapter 6, that's what we will be discussing tomorrow. All right. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.